Okay, so you know how everyone's going crazy over that 10-year-old coder, Audie,
Yeah, yeah.
building app like it's nothing, chatting with AI, the internet is obsessed.
Right.
But you know us here at the Deep Dive,
He's everywhere.
we like to get past the headlines, figure out what's really going on,
Absolutely.
and to help us decode this whole whiz kid phenomenon, we've got
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
resident expert in all things learning and tech.
It's always so interesting to hear these stories pop up, and it's just something about a young person doing incredible things that really captures our imagination. It's really fascinating.
Right, everyone loves a good prodigy story.
Yeah.
But Audie's mom actually wrote an article about it.
Okay.
And it turns out there's a lot more to it than just gifted kid with a computer.
Right.
Like, for starters, this kid isn't just messing around. He's building real apps with something called Flutter.
Yeah, and that is no small feat, let me tell you. Flutter is a professional-grade framework. It's used by, companies, developers all over the world. To imagine that a 10-year-old is already working at a level that many adults in tech would find challenging, it's...
Okay, see, that's what I'm talking about. That's the kind of context I need. It's like saying a kid is playing piano versus they're playing, like, Chopin at Carnegie Hall.
Exactly.
Huge difference.
Huge, yeah.
And her point is the media missed all the fascinating stuff that led up to this.
Right.
So how did Audie get started?
So according to the article, Audie's fascination with kind of how things work started really early on, even as a toddler, like obsessed with cars, but not just playing with them, but wanting to know what made them go.
So instead of just crashing them together, he's trying to, like, peek under the hood like a
Right.
tiny little mechanic?
Exactly. And this natural curiosity led him to block coding around the age of 5, starting with platforms like code.org, things like that.
Ah, those drag and drop coding games.
Yeah,
My niece
exactly.
loves those. But Audie didn't stop there, did he?
Not at all. So, he moved on from kind of that visual coding with Scratch to building apps with Flutter.
Yeah.
And what's so remarkable is that he largely taught himself. Like, he was driven by his own desire to create.
That's where things get really interesting.
Yeah, I can only imagine the raised eyebrows, right, that they must have encountered.
Totally.
But as someone who's, studied education systems, I can tell you traditional schooling isn't the right fit for every child.
Okay, so this is where I think a lot of people might jump to conclusions.
Right.
They hear pulled out of school, and they're imagining Audie at home playing video games all day.
Right. Right.
That's not the case at all, is it?
Not even close.
All right.
No, Audie's mom actually details kind of his daily schedule and everything in this article, and it's actually incredibly structured,
Okay.
just structured around his interests and learning style.
Okay.
For example, Audie became fascinated by the Manabu movement.
Hold on. Manabu movement. Tell me more about this.
Yeah, so it's that he actually became like a sort of young ambassador for the movement, which is incredible.
Get out of here. A 10-year-old, an ambassador.
Wow.
That's wild.
It's pretty amazing.
Okay.
Yeah,
So he's not just coding in his basement.
right.
He's out there engaging with other kids, other educators.
Precisely. And this is where, the value of mentorship really shines through in Audie's story, right?
Yeah.
Because yes, he is self-driven, but he also has this network of adults who are guiding him, sharing their expertise, encouraging his growth.
His mom specifically mentions this.
Sure.
It wasn't like they just handed him a laptop and said, like, go figure it out, kid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They understood that even the most, naturally gifted individuals benefit from having those experienced mentors to learn from, bounce ideas off of, and, help them navigate challenges.
Which makes me think about, like, that simulation card game accessory that he designed.
Yeah.
That wasn't just him knowing how to code.
Right.
That was design thinking.
Yeah.
That's problem solving. That's, like, even a bit of entrepreneurial spirit, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And this, I think, is such a crucial point that often gets overlooked in these prodigy stories, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about, raw talent or intelligence. It's about cultivating this mindset of curiosity, creativity, and the confidence to really tackle complex problems.
And let's be real, that takes discipline.
Oh, absolutely.
This kid is managing his time, setting goals, balancing his passions with, everything else. Heck, I struggle to manage my email inbox. How does he do it all without burning out?
It's kind of mind-blowing, right? I mean, we're talking about a level of, like, self-awareness and discipline that most adults haven't even mastered.
It's really impressive, for sure. But, Audie's mom really emphasizes that it's not about pushing him beyond his limits, right? It's about understanding kind of his rhythms, knowing when to, encourage him to push further and when to just pull back and let him be a kid.
Right.
And they make sure there's plenty of time for play, for family, for just relaxing and recharging.
Which makes sense because, you don't want to stifle that natural love of learning by turning it into, like, a chore, right?
Exactly. And that's such an important point, especially when we're talking about, self-directed learning.
It has to be fueled by that genuine passion, not external pressure.
Hmm.
And it's not always going to be easy. There will be challenges, there will be setbacks, maybe even moments where Audie wants to, like, throw in the towel.
And there were, right.
Yeah.
His mom mentions some pushback, from people who question their choices.
Oh, sure.
Worried about him missing out on a normal childhood.
Right, right.
I imagine that's got to be tough to deal with.
It definitely takes a thick skin, for sure, especially when you're kind of, going against the grain.
Yeah.
But Audie's story also highlights how important it is to trust your instincts, right?
Yeah.
As a parent or an educator,
Yeah.
and recognize that there are many paths to success. What works for one child may not work for another.
It's like those old maps they used to have with, like, here be dragons written on the unexplored parts.
Exactly.
Sometimes you have to be willing to venture off the beaten path to discover something truly amazing.
I love that analogy. And, it makes me think, we've talked a lot about, Audie's skills, his achievements, but what's almost more inspiring is just his sheer joy in learning.
Oh, absolutely. You can see it in his eyes when every time he's talking about coding or designing.
Learning doesn't have to be confined to, like, classrooms or textbooks.
Right.
It can be this really vibrant, exciting adventure.
So as we wrap up here, I have to ask, what's the big takeaway? Like, what can we learn from Audie's story that goes beyond the headlines and the hype?
I think the most important lesson here is that we all have a role to play in fostering that curiosity, that passion in young people. Whether we're parents, educators, mentors, or just, members of a community, we can create those spaces where kids feel empowered to explore, experiment, discover their own unique talents.
Because who knows what incredible things they might achieve. Right.
That's
Maybe they'll build the next, groundbreaking app. Or maybe they'll just discover a lifelong love of learning.
Right.
Either way, it's a win.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, on that note, a huge thank you to our expert for joining us on this deep dive into the world of a 10-year-old coding whiz. It's definitely given us a lot to think about. And to you, our listeners, we always love hearing your thoughts. What resonated with you about Audie's story? How can we better support the young learners in our own lives? Join the conversation on social media and let us know. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep that curiosity burning bright.